It was one of those quiet mornings where everything felt perfectly normal. The sun was just beginning to peek through the curtains, casting soft light across the living room. The smell of fresh coffee was still lingering in the air, and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound breaking the silence in the house. I had just finished washing up the dishes from breakfast when the phone rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I picked it up casually, wiping my hands dry. But when I heard my son's voice on the other end, something in the tone immediately made me pause. "Mom," Leo's voice cracked, barely audible. "Is Maya at home?" I glanced toward the stairs. Maya, my daughter-in-law, had been upstairs getting ready for the day. "Yes, she's here," I replied, thinking nothing of it. But Leo didn't respond right away. Instead, there was a silence that stretched far too long. I could hear the distant echoes of voices through his end of the line. Maybe he was in an airport. I could sense something was wrong. "Why do you ask?" I asked, my voice thick with concern. There was a strange pause before he spoke again, and when he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Mom, I'm standing right here in the airport at the gate, and I just saw Maya. She's boarding my flight." The world shifted beneath me. I looked around, trying to understand what I was hearing. "That's impossible," I said slowly, trying to force logic into the situation. "She's upstairs getting ready for her shower. She just told me she was staying home today." But Leo wasn't having it. His words felt like a punch to the gut. "Mom, she's standing right in front of me," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief. "I'm not mistaken." I froze. The phone almost slipped from my hand. Leo's words echoed in my head, but I didn't know how to process what he was saying. Was there some kind of mistake, a look-alike? Was I hearing things wrong? Then, just as my heart was beginning to race with confusion, I heard it, a sound so familiar it was almost comforting. The soft thud of footsteps on the stairs. My mind couldn't make sense of it. I clutched the phone tightly, my palms now clammy. I dared not turn around. My heart was pounding in my chest. I couldn't explain the fear that suddenly gripped me. The house felt different. The walls felt too close, too suffocating. "Leo," I whispered, my voice trembling, "I think you're—" And then, just as I was about to finish my sentence, the footsteps came closer. Maya's voice called out from behind me, sweet and casual. "Who are you talking to, Mom?" I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. There she was, Maya, wrapped in a towel, her wet hair tucked in a towel, but something wasn't right. I couldn't place it. Her eyes, they weren't quite the same. They were distant, empty, a coldness there I'd never seen before. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my family felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Maya smiled, a calm, perfect smile, but it wasn't her smile, not really. "Mom, who were you talking to?" she repeated, her voice eerily normal. I tried to speak, but my words failed me. Instead, I stood frozen in place, the weight of 1,000 questions hanging heavy in the air. Something was terribly wrong. And I had no idea where to even begin looking for answers. I stood there, my breath caught in my chest, staring at the woman in front of me. She looked like Maya. Everything about her screamed Maya, from the way her towel was wrapped around her to the way she moved, graceful and composed. But it wasn't her, not anymore. I glanced down at the phone in my hand, still open to Leo's call. He had heard it all, everything I had said about Maya being home, the sounds, the confusion. I hadn't heard him speak again since I'd hung up abruptly when Maya's voice reached me. The room was spinning. The pieces weren't fitting together, and I didn't know how to make them. "Mom, what's wrong?" Maya asked, stepping forward, her voice laced with concern. I could barely answer. My mind was trying to make sense of everything, but there were no logical explanations. I opened my mouth, trying to speak, but my voice wouldn't come. The woman, this strange, perfect mimic of my daughter-in-law, just smiled, her eyes bright yet unsettling, and moved past me toward the kitchen. It was as though nothing had happened. As if the conversation, the phone call, the chaos in my mind was just a figment of my imagination. I followed her slowly, trying to calm myself. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Maybe Leo had made a mistake. Maybe Maya had left and someone else had come in, someone who looked just like her, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. The hours that followed felt like a blur, a strange kind of dream where nothing was quite right, but no one was acknowledging it. Maya, this imposter, carried on with her day like nothing had happened. She hummed softly while tidying the living room, set the table for lunch, made small talk like she'd always done. But it wasn't Maya. When she rearranged the bookshelf, it was like watching a stranger perform a routine in someone else's life. I'd always known Maya had an unorthodox way of organizing things. She preferred her books sorted by color. It wasn't the most efficient system, but it was hers and it suited her chaotic beauty. But this woman, this strange version of Maya, rearranged the books in perfect alphabetical order. It was meticulous, calculated, nothing like Maya at all. I stood there watching her from the doorway, my heart sinking deeper with each passing moment. I couldn't explain why, but something about the way she moved, the way she talked, it was all wrong. When Sam, my grandson, came home from school, I was hoping for some sense of normalcy, but even that felt off. He ran straight to her, calling out, "Mommy," just as he always did, but as soon as she knelt down to hug him, something didn't sit right. "Hey there, buddy," she said to Sam, ruffling his hair. "Buddy?" Sam repeated, a small frown crossing his face. "Mommy never calls me buddy, she calls me Sammy, sweet pea, my little tiger." I froze. Sam's words were simple, innocent, but they cut through the air like a knife. It was the smallest of differences, but it sent a chill down my spine. Maya would never have called him buddy. That wasn't her. I could see it in Sam's eyes. He was confused, but he brushed it off, turning back to his story about his day at school. He was too young to understand the depth of what was wrong, but I wasn't. I felt sick. The woman standing in front of me was not Maya. She looked like her, she sounded like her, but every little thing was wrong. Her smiles, her gestures, her voice, it was all an imitation, a shadow of the person I once knew. As the afternoon wore on, I stayed close, watching her every move, waiting for something, anything that could explain this madness. The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of what was happening to my family, terrified of what I didn't know. Dinner came, and the imposter, still wearing Maya's face, set the table with a calm precision that only seemed to highlight how out of place everything felt. I could hardly eat, my stomach a tight knot. She hummed the same haunting melody she'd been humming all day, a classical tune that Maya would never have known. Maya always hummed pop songs off-key just like Sam and me, but this woman. She was something else. It wasn't just a game anymore. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I knew this woman was not Maya. When I finally went to bed that night, I lay awake, heart racing. The sound of the shower running upstairs, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant ticking of the clock, everything seemed wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly off, but I was too scared to confront it head-on. I didn't know how to, I didn't know where to start, and that fear, that gnawing uncertainty kept me awake long into the night. The woman downstairs was not Maya, but who was she? And why was she here, living in my home, pretending to be part of my family? I couldn't stay silent any longer. The next morning, I needed answers. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, the weight of the past day pressing on me like a heavy stone. I could barely sleep, my mind racing with questions, each one spiraling faster than the last. Who was this woman, and why was she pretending to be Maya? There had to be a reason, a deeper, darker reason. I went downstairs trying to act normal. Maya, whoever she was now, was in the kitchen, humming that same unsettling tune as she prepared breakfast. She smiled at me when I entered, her eyes bright, but there was something in that smile. It was polite, rehearsed, like she was playing a role. "Good morning, Sarah, coffee's ready," she said, her voice smooth and calming, but too smooth, too calm. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Morning." I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around the warm mug, the coffee barely registering in my mind. My heart was still pounding from last night. The more I tried to look at this situation from a rational perspective, the more I realized I couldn't explain any of it. Leo had seen her at the airport, the footsteps, the way she'd been acting so strangely. None of it made sense. And yet I couldn't bring myself to confront her, at least not yet. I needed more proof, more clues. Something to make sense of the madness. While Maya, or the woman pretending to be Maya, finished cooking breakfast, I stepped into the living room, trying to collect my thoughts. The familiar smell of scrambled eggs and toast filled the air, but all I could think about was the way she moved through our lives like a ghost. The woman was a mimic, and I was beginning to realize just how deep the lie ran. As I sat in the quiet, I heard it, the sound of the old can opener scraping against the tuna can. It was a small thing, but I had to focus. This was the same can opener I'd used for years, and I knew it well. But when I peeked into the kitchen, I saw her struggling with it, her hand jerking awkwardly as she tried to twist the handle. I froze. This wasn't the Maya I knew. Maya had always been so graceful, so sure of herself. I'd watched her prepare countless meals, always moving fluidly through the motions. But this was different. The woman's movements were stiff, unnatural. I watched in silence as she fumbled with the can opener, her frustration growing. Then, as if to cover up her mistake, she switched hands, suddenly using her left hand to finish the job. It wasn't possible. Maya was right-handed, always had been. I had seen her sign birthday cards, chop vegetables, hold a pen. Never, not once, had she used her left hand for anything requiring finesse. This was something else. I couldn't let it go. I walked into the kitchen, trying to keep my voice casual. "Having trouble with that old thing?" I asked, nodding toward the can opener. "I noticed you switched hands." "I didn't know you were ambidextrous." She looked up, and for a split second I saw it panic. It was quick, but it was there, hidden beneath that calm exterior. But she recovered fast, too fast. A strained laugh bubbled up from her throat. "Oh, not ambidextrous," she said with a forced smile. "I've been reading about neuroplasticity, using the other hand to build new brain pathways, just trying something new to keep my brain active." The explanation was too neat, too rehearsed. A perfect, polished excuse, but there was something hollow in her voice, something that didn't quite ring true. Maya had never been interested in neuroplasticity. Hell, Maya could barely sit through a science documentary without losing interest. I didn't push her, not yet, but I knew what I had seen. I had to gather more, piece together more of the puzzle before I could confront her. And maybe, just maybe, the next thing would reveal more about this woman than she realized. After breakfast, I found myself retreating into the backyard, the warmth of the sun doing little to soothe the storm brewing inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen, her awkwardness, her strange behavior. This woman was not Maya. She was an imposter, no doubt about it. But what did she want? What was her purpose in my home? I couldn't just sit back and wait for the truth to drop into my lap. I had to dig deeper to find the one thing that would expose her. And it wasn't long before I found it. As I walked through the hallway, something caught my eye, a small, pristine envelope sticking out from underneath a pile of paperwork on the kitchen counter. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized the handwriting on the envelope. It was Maya's handwriting. I picked it up slowly, my hands trembling. When I opened it, I found a receipt, a boutique purchase. And when I saw the price listed on the receipt, my stomach dropped. It was a designer handbag, one that I knew Maya couldn't afford, not in a million years. The price was astronomical. My mind raced. Where had she gotten this money? I was sure Maya hadn't made such a purchase. And why hide it? Why keep it a secret? This receipt, this expensive handbag, was the first piece of solid evidence that something wasn't right. It all started to come together. The strange behavior, the odd little moments where she wasn't quite Maya, this was something far bigger than just a simple misunderstanding. I needed answers, and I needed them now, but the answers I found weren't what I expected. Just as I was turning the receipt over in my hands, I heard the front door close. Maya, or whoever she was leaving the house. My heart raced. This was my chance. I grabbed my jacket, deciding to follow her. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I had to know the truth. I had to see where she was going. And maybe, just maybe, the answers I was seeking would lead me to the real Maya, or whoever was pretending to be her. I moved quickly, the pounding of my heart in my ears louder than my footsteps. I wasn't sure what I hoped to find, but I knew one thing: there was something going on that I couldn't ignore. The receipt, the strange behaviors, the awkward moments, it all pointed to something bigger than I had initially realized. But what? I watched from the window as she stepped out of the house, her car pulling out of the driveway with a smooth, practiced motion. I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I needed to follow her. I couldn't just sit here anymore. I had to know where she was going, and more importantly, who she really was. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door, making sure to keep a safe distance. I wasn't exactly sure what I would do once I found out, but I couldn't let this mystery slip through my fingers. I had to find the truth. I trailed her down the familiar suburban streets, my mind spinning. She drove with an ease that suggested she knew the route well, but there was something unsettling about the way she handled the car. Her movements were too deliberate, as if she was used to driving in a way that didn't match the carefree nature of the woman I knew. We drove for a while, out of the quiet neighborhood and into a more commercial area of town. My heart skipped when I saw her turn into a parking lot. It wasn't just any parking lot, it was a high-end shopping mall, the kind where you'd find designer stores and expensive boutiques. My stomach churned as I watched her pull into a parking space. I sat in the car for a moment, watching her. She got out and walked toward the entrance of the mall with a swift, confident pace. I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but another part knew I needed more evidence, something that would break the illusion. I followed at a distance, careful not to let her see me. As she entered the mall, I stood near the entrance, trying to blend in with the crowd. I watched as she disappeared into the store, and something inside me urged me to follow, but I held back. Instead, I walked to the nearby cafe, trying to calm my racing thoughts. There were too many questions. Why had she gone to such a fancy mall? Why the secrecy? And why had she hidden that receipt from me? It wasn't long before she came back out, her arms full with shopping bags. She didn't seem rushed, didn't seem to care that she was being followed, if she even noticed. I couldn't take my eyes off her as she loaded her bags into the trunk of the car. But the most unsettling part, there was a man with her. I saw him briefly through the window of the car as she spoke to him, leaning close in a way that felt too intimate. He had gray hair, sharp features, and was dressed in a suit that looked expensive enough to belong to someone in power. They spoke in low voices, too far for me to hear clearly, but the exchange was enough to send a cold chill down my spine. Who was he? What was their relationship? And why did it feel like they were part of some secret world I wasn't meant to understand? I felt a sickening realization settle in. This wasn't just a simple case of a woman sneaking around. This was something calculated, something planned. I couldn't just let it go. I had to know who he was. I had to get to the bottom of this. I waited until they both got into the car and drove off, and then I followed them again, trying my best to keep a safe distance. The drive led out of the city into more open roads, past rolling hills, and eventually toward a gated community that I didn't recognize. They stopped at a house tucked far behind tall gates, its security system flashing a warning as the car passed. I knew then that this was no ordinary affair. This wasn't just about Maya having a secret. It was something bigger, something dangerous. I had stumbled into a world of lies, and now it seemed like there was no turning back. I couldn't believe what I had uncovered. When I returned home, I was a bundle of nerves. My mind raced with the questions I had yet to answer. Who was the man? What was going on behind that gated house? What had Maya really been up to, and how long had she been living this double life? The house felt too quiet, too still as I stepped inside. I was back in the place where all this had started, but everything had shifted. I wasn't sure who was living in my home anymore. The woman I thought I knew had become a stranger, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending that everything was fine. I needed to talk to Leo. I needed him to help me make sense of all of this. But even as I picked up the phone to call him, a new wave of fear gripped me. If I told him what I had found out, if I told anyone, I knew I would be playing right into her hands. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was something darker, something far more dangerous, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep my family safe. The call to Leo felt like a desperate lifeline, but as I dialed his number, my hands shook, the weight of everything I had discovered pressing down on me. I had seen too much, heard too much. The lies were piling up, and every new piece of the puzzle was making the picture more twisted and incomprehensible. I didn't know what I was walking into anymore, but I knew I had to talk to Leo. He answered on the third ring, his voice still a bit distant. "Hey, Mom, what's going on?" I swallowed hard, fighting back the nerves. "Leo, I need to talk to you. There's something wrong." Something bigger than we thought. I could hear the concern in his voice immediately. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I hesitated, trying to find the words to explain the tangled mess that had unfolded over the last 48 hours. "Leo, I followed her today. I followed the woman who's pretending to be Maya." There was a brief silence, and I could almost feel his confusion through the phone. "You followed her? What do you mean, pretending to be Maya?" I quickly recounted everything I had seen, the awkwardness with the can opener, the way she behaved so differently, the shopping bags, the strange man, and the house she had pulled into. I left nothing out, not even the feeling of unease that had settled over me like a heavy fog. By the time I finished, my heart was racing. I didn't know what Leo would make of it all, but I needed him to hear me. "I think she's living a secret life. I think Maya, or whoever she is, has been living a double life for a long time, and I don't know what to do with that." Leo was quiet for a long moment, too quiet. Then his voice came back, soft and measured, like he was trying to understand what I was saying. Are you saying you think someone else is in Maya's place and this person is pretending to be her? Yes. That's exactly what I think. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I followed her today. I saw her with a man, someone I don't recognize, and they were too comfortable with each other. There's more to this than I thought, Leo. Maya's been lying, and I don't know how deep this goes, but I need you to help me figure this out. We need to expose whatever is going on here. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and my heart began to sink. I could tell Leo was processing everything I had said, and I wasn't sure what his next move would be. Finally, he spoke. Okay, Mom, I'll help you, but we need to be careful. I don't know who we're dealing with, and I don't want anyone getting hurt. You have to promise me that you won't confront her directly. Not yet. Let's figure this out first. I let out a shaky breath. I promise. We spent the next hour on the phone, Leo helping me piece together the puzzle of what had been happening under our noses. He suggested we both gather more evidence, anything that could solidify what we both already knew. We couldn't confront her yet, that would be a mistake, but we could track down the truth. I'll look into the man I saw her with, Leo said, his voice steady now. I've got connections in the airline industry. I can find out who he is and what he's doing with her. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. And I'll keep watching her. I'll figure out who she's really talking to. I need to know what's going on, Leo. We're not just dealing with a cheating spouse here. This is something bigger, something dangerous. I know, Leo said. We'll figure this out together. The phone call ended, and I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the wall, trying to process everything. But the questions didn't stop. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Maya wasn't just living a double life. She was part of something that I couldn't yet understand, a secret world filled with lies and manipulation. And I had no idea where it would lead. The hours passed slowly, and with each tick of the clock I could feel the pressure mounting. I couldn't stop thinking about the man Maya had been with, the silver-haired man who looked like he belonged to another world. The world that Maya had been hiding from us, and the more I thought about it, the more the pieces began to fall into place. But there was still one thing I couldn't shake, Maya's absence from her own life. It felt like she wasn't just gone physically, she was gone emotionally too, and if I was going to uncover the truth, I needed to get to the heart of what she had been hiding. I didn't know how much time we had before everything would fall apart, but I did know one thing, whatever this was, it was only going to get worse before it got better. As night fell, I found myself standing by the window again, staring out into the dark streets. The house felt quieter than ever before, the silence thick with anticipation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something I couldn't control, and in that moment I realized I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was searching for a way to protect my family from the storm that was heading our way, and I wasn't sure we were ready for it. The next few days blurred together in a haze of tension and quiet observation. The house, once filled with the normal hum of life, had turned into something else, a place where every movement felt like it could trigger a bigger revelation, a deeper secret. The woman I had once considered part of my family was now someone I could barely recognize. Every interaction with her felt like playing a part in a twisted game that I had no idea how to win. I didn't trust myself to make any more rash decisions. I kept my distance, watching closely, gathering every small detail, every inconsistency. But the more I observed, the more I realized that Maya, or the woman who wore her face, was playing her role with terrifying precision. She knew how to act the part, how to carry herself, how to make the household run smoothly. But there were cracks, tiny but noticeable, and I was determined to find them. The strange thing was, she never once seemed surprised. Never once showed any hesitation. It was as if she knew I was watching. I couldn't shake the image of the man she had been with at the mall. The thought haunted me, and despite Leo's warning to be cautious, I couldn't help but feel the need to know more. Who was he? What was his connection to her? Why was she living this hidden life? What could possibly be worth deceiving everyone she loved? I had to get answers. But how? That afternoon, as I stood in the kitchen making lunch, a thought struck me like a lightning bolt. A sudden clarity that I hadn't had before. This woman, whoever she was playing a part in a much larger game, and I needed to understand how deep this deception went. I waited until she was in the other room, occupied with cleaning up, and quietly slipped into the study. Maya's, no, the imposter's personal things were scattered across the desk, and I needed to see what I could find. I felt guilty for snooping, but the feeling of unease in my stomach was stronger than any sense of propriety. I had to know. It didn't take long before I found what I was looking for. A series of receipts, all dated within the past few weeks, different stores, different locations, all expensive and all signed with Maya's name. But the items she'd purchased were telling. High-end clothing, accessories, and then my eyes caught on something that made my heart drop: flight tickets. Tickets to places I knew Maya couldn't afford to go. I picked up the flight details and scanned them. Paris, London, New York. All first-class tickets. But here's the thing that didn't add up. Maya had never been the type to splurge like this. Her lifestyle was simple, comfortable, but nothing extravagant. There was no way she could afford these trips, and even if she could, why keep them a secret? I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't just about her running away for the occasional business trip. This was planned. This was deliberate. As I stood there trying to make sense of it all, the door to the study creaked open. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat. There she was, standing in the doorway, a soft smile on her face, but there was something off about it. A glint in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. "Are you looking for something, Sarah?" she asked, her tone too sweet, too casual. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was racing. I could feel the walls closing in on me. My pulse quickened, my hands shaking as I set the receipts down and tried to compose myself. I was just looking for some old family photos," I said, forcing a smile. I didn't mean to intrude, but she didn't buy it. The smile faded from her face, replaced by something more calculating, more guarded. For a brief moment, I saw the flicker of something dark in her eyes, a warning. "I understand," she said quietly, "just be careful what you dig through. Some things are better left undisturbed." Her words hit me like a cold slap, a threat subtle but unmistakable. I didn't back down. I couldn't. I had to know the truth. But as I watched her turn and walk away, my heart sank. There was a tension in the air now, a dangerous undercurrent. This woman, this imposter, was no longer just a mystery. She was a threat. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized just how far this deception went. Later that evening, I sat down with Leo again, unable to keep it in any longer. The weight of everything I'd uncovered felt suffocating. "I found flight tickets," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "To Paris, London, New York, all first class, and the shopping, expensive stuff, Leo, stuff Maya would never have bought, not in a million years." Leo was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with disbelief. "You're telling me Maya was going to all these places and buying all this stuff?" "Exactly, and none of it adds up. This woman, whoever she is, has been living a life I don't even recognize. But I don't know what to do with this information. If I tell Daniel, I might ruin everything, and if I don't know who I'm living with anymore." Leo let out a long sigh. "Mom, this is bigger than we thought. You're right, but we need to be smart about this. The more you dig, the more dangerous it gets." "I know," I replied, my voice shaking. "But what if we're too late? What if she's already taken everything from us?" We both fell silent, the weight of the unknown settling around us. The truth was out there, but it was buried under layers of lies, and every time I uncovered a new piece, it felt like I was digging myself deeper into a hole I might never be able to climb out of. "Just be careful, Mom," Leo finally said. "We'll figure this out, but we need to take our time. We need to expose her, but we can't do it without proof." As I hung up the phone, I realized that we were standing at the edge of something much darker than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about my family, my home, and everything that I thought was real. And now, with each passing day, the walls were closing in, and I wasn't sure how much longer we could pretend that everything was fine. The days after my conversation with Leo felt like a slow-motion train wreck. I could feel the pressure building inside me, and the strain of keeping up appearances with the woman who was living in my home, pretending to be Maya, was wearing me down. Each time I spoke to her, I could see the cracks starting to show. The smile, the calm demeanor, it was all starting to feel like a fragile mask that was just barely holding together. I spent the next few days keeping a closer watch not just on her, but on my son Daniel too. He seemed lost, going through the motions of daily life but with none of the spark that had once defined him. I could see the shadows in his eyes, the slow erosion of trust. I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard, he might see through the lies, and I wasn't sure he could handle the truth. It was a Saturday afternoon when the next thing happened, the thing that I could never have predicted. I was sitting on the porch, the warm California sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows over the garden. I had just finished a call with Leo discussing the next steps when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I glanced up, expecting to see Maya, this imposter, coming back from her errands. But when the car door slammed shut, I noticed something different. A man stepped out of the car. He was tall, wearing a dark suit with a thick silver streak running through his hair. His features were sharp, his expression unreadable. He walked with purpose toward the front door, his presence commanding, like he had no business being anything less than exactly where he was. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This wasn't just a random visitor. This was the man I had seen with her in the parking lot, the man I couldn't stop thinking about. He looked too confident, too comfortable, like he belonged here, like he was part of whatever game Maya, or whoever she was now, was playing. I waited a few moments, trying to gather my thoughts before standing up from the porch and walking toward the front door. I opened it just in time to see the man ring the bell. Maya, or the woman in Maya's place, answered quickly, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Richard," she exclaimed, and the sound of his name felt like a knife. I froze, my feet glued to the ground. Richard. A new wave of dread washed over me. This was no ordinary visitor. This wasn't just someone she was casually spending time with. This was someone important, someone she had been hiding from us all along. I couldn't just stand there watching them exchange pleasantries. I had to know what was going on. I had to know who he was and what his connection to her was. I watched as she led him inside, her laughter echoing lightly through the open door. They were talking in hushed tones, their voices growing fainter as they moved further into the house. I wanted to go after them, confront them both, but something told me that doing so now would only push me further into the unknown. I needed to know what they were up to first. As I stood in the doorway, a chill ran down my spine. Richard. The name alone felt like a key to a door I wasn't ready to open. It was the first time I'd heard the name, but it wasn't the first time it had haunted me. I quickly grabbed my phone and texted Leo. "She's with him, the man, his name is Richard. I think he's the one behind all this. I need help, Leo. I don't know what to do." As I waited for his reply, I felt the creeping sensation of being trapped. What was Richard's role in all of this? What was Maya, or this imposter, hiding from us? I knew she had been living a double life, but how deep did it go? A few minutes later, Leo's response came through. "I'll be there soon. Stay calm, Mom. We'll figure this out." Stay calm. How was I supposed to stay calm when my whole world felt like it was crumbling around me? How was I supposed to sit back and pretend everything was fine when I knew there were secrets in my own home, secrets I couldn't even begin to understand? I needed answers. I needed to confront them, but I knew I had to wait for Leo. He was the only person who could help me untangle this mess. But as I watched Maya and Richard disappear into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of time. Soon, the truth would have to come to light, and I wasn't sure any of us were prepared for what that truth would be. It felt like we were all on the edge of something, a precipice, and if we weren't careful, we'd fall right into the abyss. How deep did the lies go, and when the mask finally came off, would there be anything left to salvage? All I knew for certain was that the stakes were higher than I could ever have imagined. This wasn't just about a betrayal anymore. This was about survival, my family's survival, and I was running out of time to stop it. The days following the revelation of Richard's name felt like an eerie calm before a storm. My thoughts raced, unable to grasp the full scope of the web that had been spun around me. Maya, or the woman who now claimed to be her, was slipping further away from the person I thought I knew. I couldn't shake the image of Richard walking into our house with such authority, as if he were already part of the family. Something about him didn't sit right with me. His presence was unsettling, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. The phone call from Leo came late that night. "Mom, I've been digging. I've found out some things about Richard." Leo's voice was strained, each word carefully measured. "He's not just some guy Maya's been seeing. He's connected to some shady stuff. I'm talking about criminal enterprises, Sarah. There's a lot more to him than we thought." My stomach dropped at the mention of criminal ties. I could feel the room closing in on me. All the questions, all the doubts I had been pushing aside, now they were flooding back with a vengeance. Maya had been hiding this man, and worse, she'd been hiding him for a reason. I don't know how deep this goes, Leo continued. But I need you to stay away from him, okay? Don't confront her, don't confront him, it's dangerous. The warning was clear. My instincts told me that everything was about to spiral out of control, but I had no choice. I had to confront the truth, I had to find out everything. The next morning, I watched Maya through the window as she left for the day. There was a different look in her eyes, one that seemed to say she knew I was watching. I had never felt so powerless. I didn't know who she was anymore. I followed her again, keeping my distance, my heart racing as I turned down the familiar streets. I had to know where this was leading. I had to see where the lies would end. She stopped at a coffee shop, something small, tucked between two larger buildings. I waited in my car, watching her enter. Then I saw it. Richard was sitting inside, waiting for her. Their conversation was low, but the body language spoke volumes. They were close, too close. There was an intimacy that made my blood run cold. I texted Leo, my fingers trembling. She's with him again. I can't stand this anymore, Leo. I need answers. I need to know what they're planning. Leo's reply came swiftly. We need to move quickly, Mom. Stay alert. Don't approach them. I watched for another few minutes before I turned the car around and headed home. But something was different this time. I wasn't just scared, I was furious. Furious at the betrayal, at the secrets, and most of all at the woman who had once been part of my family. How had it come to this? How had I let myself get pulled into a lie so deep, so dangerous? The phone call with Leo echoed in my mind. He was right. This wasn't just about family anymore, it was about survival. The days blurred together in a haze of uncertainty. Every moment spent under the same roof with Maya or the woman who wore her face felt like a countdown. The lies were piling up, and soon there would be nowhere left to hide. I spent my days walking around the house trying to keep busy, but my mind was constantly racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Richard, about Maya, and about what I had uncovered. The receipt, the lies, the way she'd been living a life so far removed from anything I knew. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the windows, Maya sat down beside me on the couch. Her usual smile was absent, replaced by something colder, more guarded. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and palpable. Mom, she said quietly, her voice softer than usual, I know you've been watching me. And I know you've been following me. It's time we had a real conversation. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The confrontation I had been dreading. I couldn't back down now. I had to face her to hear the truth, whatever it was. Who are you? I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. What have you done with Maya, and who is Richard? She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes cold and distant. Then, with a deep sigh, she spoke. I am who I need to be, she said, her words deliberate. Maya was never part of the plan. I've been living my life the way I wanted to, not the way you expected me to. Richard, he's a business partner, nothing more. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots, but the more she spoke, the less sense it all made. Maya's dead, isn't she? I whispered, the realization hitting me like a slap to the face. The woman in front of me didn't flinch, she didn't deny it. Yes, she said simply, Maya's gone. And I've been taking her place for months now. The weight of her words crashed over me. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't know how to respond. How could I? You killed her, I choked out, my voice breaking. You killed my daughter-in-law and you've been pretending to be her. It wasn't like that, she said, her tone more dismissive now. Maya had her times, she was weak, she was always afraid. I'm just better suited for the role. I stood up, backing away from her, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Better suited, I repeated, my voice rising. You killed her, you've been living her life, lying to my son, to all of us. Her expression softened for a moment, but there was no remorse in her eyes, only a cold, calculated look. I didn't want to do it, she said, almost as if explaining herself. But you wouldn't understand. Maya was a liability, she was too emotional, I had to do what needed to be done. I was trembling now, the full weight of the situation crashing over me. My family, my life had been torn apart by this woman, and I didn't know how to stop it. I had no idea how to undo what had been done. You're a monster, I whispered, my voice barely audible. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile I recognized. It was cold, empty, and it sent a chill down my spine. I'm not a monster, she said softly. I'm just doing what's necessary. I turned and ran out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The walls felt like they were closing in. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. I had to escape before she came after me next. But as I reached for the door, I heard her voice again, calm and steady. "You won't escape, Sarah. You're already part of this, you always have been." And just like that, I realized she was right. There was no escaping her. There was no escaping the web she had woven. And now, I had to figure out how to survive in a world where nothing was what it seemed. Would you like to continue with the rest of the story? Let me know how you'd like to proceed. I stood frozen at the doorway, my hand gripping the doorknob, but I couldn't make myself move. Her words lingered in the air, cutting through me like a blade. "You won't escape, Sarah. You're already part of this. You always have been." The truth hit me hard, but in a way I had never expected. I had spent so long trying to protect my family, trying to keep the world I knew intact, but now I realized how fragile everything really was. The woman who had been masquerading as Maya, the woman who had killed her, wasn't just a stranger to me, she was a part of my life now. She had woven herself into every moment, every conversation, every memory. I had no escape. As I stood there, paralyzed by the crushing weight of it all, I could hear her footsteps approaching behind me, slow and deliberate. There was no more pretending, no more lies. The woman I had known as my daughter-in-law was gone, and the woman behind me was a cold, calculating stranger who had manipulated us all. "You're right," I said quietly, finally turning to face her. "There's no escaping now." Her lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth behind it, just a sense of finality, as if the game was over. "There never was," she said, her voice smooth, almost kind. "But you're not the only one who's been living in fear, Sarah. Now that we've all been pulled into this, the only question left is, what will you do with the truth?" Her words hung in the air like smoke, filling the room with a heaviness I couldn't escape. But the truth wasn't just about her. It was about me, about my family, about the decisions we had all made that led us here. And no matter how twisted the path had become, I had a choice. I could confront this. I could confront her. I could stop running. "Do you think Leo will ever forgive you?" I asked, my voice trembling but firm. "Do you think my son will ever forgive you for what you've done?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took a step back, her gaze never leaving mine. The silence between us was deafening, but in that silence I realized something. She might have won this battle, but she hadn't won the war. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't going to let her control my family any longer. The weight in my chest didn't lift, but the fire in my heart burned brighter. I had one thing left to do: take the truth to Leo, take it to my family, and together we would stop this. We would make things right, even if the truth had to tear everything apart first. And now, dear listener, the question remains: what happens next? Will Sarah find the strength to face the truth? Will her family pull together in the face of betrayal and deceit? Or will the web of lies spun by this mysterious woman tear them apart for good? The story is far from over. And the twists, the secrets, and the decisions that lie ahead will determine whether redemption is possible or if some truths are too heavy to bear. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for what's to come, because sometimes the truth isn't just a revelation. It's a battle, and Sarah is ready to fight.